welcome everyone. Like Rob said, I'm so excited to be here with our speaker today, my funny Valentine. Would you I'd love for you to introduce yourself before we jump into our meetings. And thank you so much for making the time today, and happy Pride.
Happy Pride, everyone. I'm Valentine. I'm the founder of Matador Meggings, Meggings as in men's leggings. We make world's most comfortable men's leggings and compression gear. My last role was SVP of product at Bands in Town, which is a concert discovery platform. Prior to that, I spent 8 years working at Facebook and launched new offices for them in India, Philippines, and Poland. And I built their global organization specializing in product development, e-commerce, marketing, advertising, and operations. And before that, I was at Colgate and Palmolive and IBM.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Valentine. So I'd love to jump in and, so we're going to talk about being an entrepreneur today. This is our broad topic, and then we're going to zoom in on some more specifics here. So can you tell us, how did you know that like entrepreneurship was right for you? And can you give us, a bit of, you told us a little bit about your bio so far and your resume. Can you talk about like the outline of your ventures so far? So we heard about like where you worked, but can you tell us about like, I feel like that word's thrown around a lot. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, what does that mean for you? And how do you live in that on a regular basis? And how has that informed how you pursue your projects?
Sure. That's a good question. When did I know if entrepreneurship was the right thing for me? Honestly, I never knew, and I still don't. Entrepreneurship has so many challenges in addition to the rewards. The highs are too high, the lows are too low. So I don't think most entrepreneurs have figured out if entrepreneurship is right for them. What I know is I always wanted to make a big impact in the world, and entrepreneurship allows me to do that. I wanted to have the freedom to move fast without bureaucracy. I wanted to be in charge. And after spending 15 years in corporate America, what's most valuable in this phase of my life is freedom in terms of place, in terms of time. I wanted to work wherever, I wanted to work whenever I wanted. And entrepreneurship allowed me to be a digital nomad before the pandemic era. And these days it's pretty much available to most people in most companies. But when I launched this company 3 years ago, that wasn't an option to anyone, except if you're an entrepreneur and owned your own business.
Wow, I love that. So I love that you just touched on like you were already nomadic before the pandemic. Is that what you were just saying?
Exactly. So I mentioned that I worked at Facebook for 8 years and so many different companies. And one day I finally burnt out. I'm a yoga teacher, and I actually came up with this idea of men's leggings years ago. The first day of the yoga school, I found myself in a room full of 20 women in yoga pants, also known as tights and leggings. And I thought to myself, like, why don't why don't these mega brands make leggings for men? Of course, they're tights, but they're designed as undergarments. So I said, okay, I want to make the best men's leggings in the world.
Undergarment or fashion statement, depending on the day, right?
Exactly. So, and finally, I quit my job for 3.5 years ago and started my journey as an entrepreneur.
Amazing. So, you use the word journey. Let's talk about, so this is what part of our topic here is like mistakes, right? Brene Brown says, vulnerability is an act of courage, right? I'm paraphrasing a bit. So I invite you to be courageous now, Valentine, and tell us what are some of the biggest mistakes that maybe, I'll put it in two different lenses, perhaps, or maybe the most challenging for you. I'll put in three. Maybe some ones that could be avoided as advice for future folks, and maybe the ones that were the most informative and that can, dare I say, even grateful for the mistakes.
Of course. Yeah, I love this topic. Actually, initially when the event organizers asked me about like, what do you want to talk about? The topic I came up with was how I screwed royally. I may have even used the F bomb. I'm like, oh, I effed it up. And they were like, okay, let's change it to do's and don'ts of entrepreneurship. I love talking about this. And yeah, let me give you my top three. Number one would be, don't try to be everything to everyone. Find your niche. When I came up with this idea of creating men's leggings, I remember so vividly, I told my dad, I'm like, okay, I'm going to sell tights for men. And then he goes, just tights, like no shirts, no t-shirts, no shorts. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I should just come up with an activewear brand. And before you knew, I had all these categories from joggers to shorts to tank tops to hoodies. And it took me months and months of development. It took me a lot of money. And knowing what I know now, I would say, find your niche. You don't have to serve all men or all women. Narrow down your audience as much as you can and give them a single product that they will love. You will scale over time, but first focus on your core product. My mistake was I wanted to launch an activewear brand. So I made 68 references, which took me 9 months to develop. At the end of the day, 80% of my sales was generated by my hero product, which is Meggings. So hindsight, I would have focused on that single category, which is men's leggings, and launch a website for only that. And over time, if I wanted, I can always keep adding tops, joggers, and other categories.
Right. But how did you know, like, how would you know that in advance? Had you not put out all the things? Like, it sounds like you thought your initial idea was the male leggings, Meggings, and you're like, I'll expand it. But what if you had a different idea and you're like, well, I'll add some Meggings, and like, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly. That's a great question.
You don't cast the net out. How do you know what your best thing selling is? For you, it happened to be your original idea, but that might not be everyone's experience.
Exactly. You always go with your first idea. At the end of the day, I think there aren't any entrepreneurs left out there who's going to be like, let me start a t-shirt company or a t-shirt printing company. Internet is already crowded, right? Every single website is selling t-shirts. So as an entrepreneur in this day and age, you have to differentiate your product. You have to find your niche. No one's gonna make big bucks just by selling t-shirts. So your $1 million idea, which in my case was men's leggings designed for the male anatomy with a modesty pad to conceal the groin department and pockets and other features. That was my $1 million idea. Everything else was an add-on. You know, the famous saying that Coco Chanel said, always take out the last accessory before you leave your apartment. I just paraphrased it. Same for this question. Leave out the second and third and fourth, pretty much all other ideas out the door. Just go with your core product. If I wanted to make jock straps, then I would go with that. And then leggings would be in addition to that.
Right.
Yeah. So let me go to number 2, start marketing early.
Yeah. Well, first, before you jump in with that, I got to say a big success on that topic is, speaking of marketing, Meggings, brilliant marketing name. I just want to highlight that. I was like, I know exactly what that is in one word.
Thank you so much. We actually get so much shit for it. A lot of people. Yeah. I mean, I came up with the idea because it's a good portmanteau. It's fun. It tells the story that these are not just leggings designed for women, like which is an afterthought. It's,
people named Megan angry. What's going on? I don't understand.
Yeah, I think some people get angry, be like, why do we have to gender a product,
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like, yeah, we have to gender it because this is built for male anatomy and the groin department. Also, we're having fun here. Everybody should. It rolls off the tongue. It's great marketing. And it's a great conversation starter.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for the compliments.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, number 2, start marketing early. Don't wait to have the perfect website to put yourself out there. Create a landing page as soon as possible, communicating the upcoming product or service, and start collecting email addresses. Maybe publish your Instagram, Facebook, Twitter pages as soon as you come up with the business idea and start gathering that relevant audience. This way, once you are ready to launch, you already have a sizable audience ready to buy. My mistake was I waited literally until the launch date to publish my website and launch the social profiles. So I had to start from zero. I wish I did all that a year ago when I came up with the idea. So by the time my store was live, I would have potential customers waiting for me.
Sorry, I was muted there. I was listening and I was like, oh, not. Yeah. So jump in, have your marketing ready. I know. I mean, I feel like it's such a pratfall for an entrepreneur, whether you're launching a business or whether you're a freelancer, right? It's like, oh, I want to like present that I'm a professional, that I have it together, whatever. There's all these things that like, at the end of the day, I suffer from it too, as a creative, like I'll get in my own way of feeling like I haven't done all the homework, like I want to be the good student and I want to get an A+ on my drawing,
And you don't have to. You don't have
Right.
to. When I worked at Facebook, the mentality there was if people love the first version of your product and you get like 5-star rating, you launched it too late. Your first product should always be, or like your first delivery should be somewhat shitty. It's not like picture perfect. And then you will iterate over time. Same with the marketing aspect of it as well. Just the idea is enough to create that buzz and hype around it.
Yeah. Huh. So did we already touch on like what mistakes you are grateful for?
Yeah. What mistakes I'm grateful for?
Yeah, like now in hindsight, let's go back. So like, how long has Meggings been up and running now?
It's been 2.5 years. And I think
okay, so you've been doing it at a really wild time too.
Exactly. Oh yeah. Well, I was so smart to launch my company 20 minutes before the pandemic hit. Like
Yeah.
literally, I launched it, and then the
You're
world
like launch and
like,
shut down.
Exact. No, that's the honest truth. My factory shut down. I couldn't restock. It was a huge shit show. But I'll give you a third mistake, which is don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just build a better one. A lot of young entrepreneurs, including myself, spend years looking for $1 million idea that does not exist. Such a waste of time. Innovation eats invention for breakfast. Like, don't sweat it too hard to come up with a unique idea that no one thought before, because 99 of the time, it's either thought or it's just not a good idea, hence it doesn't exist. What I would say is if you look around for 5 minutes, I guarantee you can find 10 products in your apartment that could have been improved. This could be socks, a toaster, an app, a stool, a clothing. In my case, it was men's leggings. I didn't invent the concept of leggings. Tights and compression pants existed for decades. I just took an existing product. I identified the issues with it. For example, leggings or tights don't come with pockets. So I added two pockets to my product, a zippered one and open one for your phone. Leggings
I
exposed.
always need somewhere to put stuff, I just
exactly.
Like what if, it's just, it feels we're tied to some of these things. But what if you're, maybe you're not in a class, maybe you're out like in the park doing yoga, like we've taken everything outdoors. That's a really simple, smart addition.
Yeah, thank you. For example, men's leggings expose too much of male genitalia, and
well, it depends who you ask, Valentine. I'd have to say.
Exactly. I know. I always tell people shouldn't tell your religion by your leggings. That's why I invented this modesty pad. It's like, women
Which is
have
the best
sports
term
bra.
for that I've ever heard,
Thank you. So no matter what size or shape your junk is, it gives you a perfectly rounded superhero crutch. So you don't have to wear ugly shorts over your leggings.
Right.
So I saw this need, and I took an existing product and invented. So my mistake was, for decades, I come from a very entrepreneurial family. My dad is an entrepreneur, my mom's an entrepreneur, my sister's an entrepreneur, my grandma is an entrepreneur. Everybody had their own business except me. I've just spent 15 years in corporate America as a corporate slave. And my mistake was that I kept looking for a brand new invention for decades. And guess what? It never came up. Now that I changed my perspective from invention to innovation, I have a long list of products that can be improved and remarketed, similar to what I'm doing now. So if I ever sell this business, I have a lot of ideas to launch a new business.
Amazing. So, where can people find your Meggings, by the way?
I'm so glad you asked. Let's do a little shameless plug. Matador Meggings, Matador like a bullfighter, Meggings like men's leggings.com,
Yes.
or all socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, at Matador Meggings.
Yeah, so you're gonna get those targeted ads now, folks. You've heard it here, and now it's coming for you, and you're gonna want them.
I mean, I think so, but I'm biased.
Yeah. I mean, if y'all go onto the website, they're so fun, and I'm just like flipping through some of them now, or just like you got tie-dye, you got camo, you got outer space, you got like bright colors and bold patterns, and it's fit for male forms, or male identifying forms. And it's just, there's so much fun, which is nice too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, there's something for everybody in there. So if you could go back in time, you could get in your time machine, we were talking about some mistakes. If you could go back to your, you've talked about like, what did you say earlier? Like, don't try and reinvent the wheel, just build a better one. I love that. Innovation eats invention for breakfast. Love that. Like, these are all great pieces of advice. Is there another piece of advice that maybe to you specifically, because maybe there was someone that can identify with where you were at when you were starting out, to give some advice to your past self?
Yeah, that's a good question. There is one, and I'll give you that, but not only my past self, but my current self as well. This is something that I need to repeat myself again and again. Sometimes I do very well, and then sometimes I drop the ball, which is prioritize ruthlessly. I've come to realize that you can eliminate 80% of the tasks on your to-do list and still get the same exact results or success. We have a dozen items on our to-do list every single day, but the truth is only one or maximum two of those projects will contribute to 95% of the impact you make that day. So as an entrepreneur, you'll have an infinite amount of tasks. So be very picky and don't hesitate to drop things, deprioritize things, drop them like it's on. My mistake was when I launched new offices for Facebook in India, Poland, and Philippines, the amount of work that goes into opening a new office and hiring, onboarding, training a completely new team is beyond anyone's wildest imagination. So I actually ended up working 16 hours a day for months and burned out, only to realize that 80% of the tasks that I worked on weren't even mentioned in my success or overall impact I made. They were good to do and nice things, and helpful as well, but not necessarily impactful. So one advice that I would give my old self throughout my entire career as a corporate slave or an entrepreneur now, or my current self, I always ask, like, is this crucial? If I don't do this, like, what are the consequences? If it's good to have, or for example, if it can wait for 2-3 weeks for me to do, it can probably wait for 2, 3 years or never be done at all. So that's a good way of thinking.
Hmm. And so when did you figure out, how did you figure out the things we talked a bunch about mistakes and stuff. When did you figure out like, oh, we're doing this right? And I'm sure that was informed by mistakes, but then when did you start to like maybe catch a wave, right? And it starts to take off and people are responding to it and finding your flow. When did you start to see like, oh, this works, let's do more of that, less of this?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, Quite recently, actually. If you're a solo entrepreneur, like a one-man show, you don't have a lot of people around you to serve as a soundboard. So it's just you and your inner voice, which often tells you you're not doing enough, you're not doing it right. So I eventually figured out I was on the right track once I launched my brand and the customer feedback started coming in. I had so many letters, photos, emails, praises, glowing reviews, and it was very flattering and very assuring. But up until that customer feedback, I didn't get any feedback at all. So I constantly, the first year of the business, which is like, it took me 9 to 12 months to develop the brand, the products, design the collection, and work on the marketing. Throughout that time, I always doubted myself, questioned, am I on the right track, whatnot. So yeah, so I think that receiving the customer feedback was the game changer. And don't get me wrong, I still doubt myself daily. In fact, like you talked about vulnerability, one of my most vulnerable moments is when I confess that I consider quitting and just closing the business. And this is a daily thought. It's almost like, you know, if you are experiencing depression, you have no control over it. You have no control over when it's going to hit you, how it's going to hit you. You just live with it. Like I don't experience depression, but this is my version of it. This thought of quitting. I have no control over it, but what I do every day is I'm like, okay, this, like, literally every single morning I wake up and I say, like, this is the day I'm going to quit. And then I go to bed every night. I'm like, okay, I should quit. And sometimes things go so bad because I told you in the beginning of the conversation, lows are really low and highs are really high. So those lows, I'm like, oh, I can't deal with this anymore. I can't deal with this workload. And sometimes highs are really high. Things are going amazing. I see celebrities wearing my product and I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And the company grows from 1 person to 4 employees. And I'm like, okay, this is going out of control. I can't do this. So like either things go really well or really bad. I still think about quitting. But at the end of the day, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's that voice, right? That inner voice that I feel like my relationship to it was like, okay, it's like almost like I'm talking to a different person at times. I'd be like, okay, I hear you. I hear you're concerned, and like I acknowledge your feelings. And I think we can, work through this, or whatever. But there are some days when it's really hard. It's really, really hard.
Mhm.
What would you say there are? And we only have 5 minutes left, which is, there's great questions coming in from the audience, and I want to touch on one that I thought was really good too. They're all great. But you talked about you think about quitting, but you don't. So why don't you? And what is that for you? That process of being like, okay, I hear that, and we're gonna keep going today. How do you make that choice? What helps you continue your pursuit today and
yeah. That's a really, really good question. I have to do a 10-second introspection for that. I don't think I actually have thought about it or figured it out myself. I think, yeah, so I've been on this journey for 3 years and I've seen this, the impact that I made and what I was capable of. And each challenge is challenging until you overcome. For example, the challenges I had 2 years ago, now they're no longer challenges for me. Like literally the things that kept me awake for an entire night, or like the issues that gave me so much trouble a year ago are no longer a concern to me. They're just like part of my daily life. So whenever I'm faced with a huge challenge, like sometimes I bite more than I can swallow, I realize that, okay, this is a big challenge, but once I overcome this, and I know I'll figure out a way, I'll find a way, or I'll make one, it will no longer be a challenge. This is the third time Brené Brown is coming up in this conversation, but one of my favorite quotes from her last book, Atlas of the Heart, she talks about these difficult situations, and she developed this question that she asks herself when she's faced with adversity. She goes, will this issue be a big deal in 5 minutes or 5 hours? 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, or maybe 5 years? And that to me was a huge aha moment and life changer. So now when I consider quitting because I'm having a really hard time and so I'm faced with adversity, I ask myself, will this be an issue in 5 days or 5 weeks or 5 months? And the answer is often no. It won't be a big deal in 5 months or 5 weeks. So that really, it doesn't make things any easier in the moment, but it changes your attitude. And your attitude is how you solve a problem. When you shift your attitude, then you're more efficient, you're more effective, you embracing the problem, and you're able to sit into it.
Wow. Yeah. Well, with just our, I feel like we're also just like, let's get Brené on the speaker today, because we just, I'm so grateful to her. I mean, she's just, so helpful for so many of us. I haven't read her new book yet, so thank you for highlighting that for me. Of course. That out.
There is this one question that really stood out for me, and
I think is it the one about some hard choices?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Okay. So with our last minute, can you say maybe, so someone asked from the audience, it was an anonymous question, what are some hard choices you had to make to get where you are? We only have a minute left. Can you?
Of course, I'll make it really quick. And there's a list of questions that I'm like, okay, I'm dying to answer that. As an entrepreneur, you sacrifice from everything. You sacrifice from money for the starters. I have a really good paying 6-figure job, and I had to leave there, right? Money has never been a question in my life because I had all these amazing jobs, and my salary always multiplied from one role to another, one company to another. But now that I'm an entrepreneur, I am poor AF. So that's number one. Number two, you have to sacrifice from yourself. As a yoga teacher, I used to practice every single day, sometimes twice a day, in the morning and at night. Now, like working out twice a day or like every single day, unfortunately not an option, because you sacrifice from your time. Number three, you sacrifice from your family and friends. In the past, happy hours was a daily or like weekly event for me. Like, I would see my friends 3, 4, 5 times a week after work on weekends. Now there are multiple nights a week that I end up staying in the office until 9, 10. And after that time, you are burnt out. So you just want to go home and cry. Or on weekends, there are multiple weekends that you actually end up crunching work. So you sacrifice your relationships with your friends and family. So as an entrepreneur, there are a lot at stake. And when you commit to it, and you ask yourself, my family or my baby, which is my venture, my friends, my friend time, or my yoga time, my exercise time, my travel time. You want to take 2-week vacation. I'm like, you can't. Who's going to run the business if you're out of office for that long? So I think these are the sacrifices that you need to consider that I never had to worry about in corporate life.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Valentine, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and telling us about your experience and being courageous in your vulnerability. To praise be, Brene Brown. And thank you so much. Happy Pride. It's been such a gift to speak with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.